Hello and welcome back to Music Theory, where we're going to be going over all your favorite music theory techniques. So, we are going to be going ahead and starting right off the bat with intervals. So in our last video, we talked a bit about scales and how they go. And so now we're going to be looking at, well, what about the distances between certain keys? I'm here to show you that. So, we've already been over what a half step is. It's a one key on the keyboard over. And that is called also a minor second. So, just remember each of these names is, you're going to have to remember, oh, what is this interval? Well, from C to C sharp or C to D flat, because remember that's an enharmonic. We will see that it is a minor second. Then, guess what the next one is? A whole step is called a major second. That's right. Then, 3 half steps is called a minor third. So, for example, a C to A, E flat here, is known as a minor third here. And then we have, for example, a C to an E. That's called a major third. And then, say a C to an F is a perfect fourth. That's 5 half steps. Then we have the great and glorious C to F sharp, a tritone. Now, fun fact about a tritone, back in the day, anyone who played tritone would be considered of the devil, and they would be hanged. So, we have that, and then let's do a perfect fifth. Do you recognize that? That's right, it's from Star Wars. This is also known as the Star Wars interval. So, that is 7 half steps, a perfect fifth. And also, a tritone, I need to recap real quick. A tritone is also known as an augmented fourth, or a diminished fifth, or known as a tritone. Oh, isn't that a glorious sound? Don't you just love it? Okay, so, we then have a major sixth, which we go, or minor sixth, sorry, we didn't do an A flat yet. And then we have a major sixth between the C and the A, the 9 half steps, minor seventh, C to B flat, major seventh, and an octave, C to C. Doesn't that sound just fantastic? I think it does. So, something to note when trying to remember what each of the intervals mean is that they're actually derived from the letters that you have. So, remember how we were talking about scale degrees, and we have first scale degree and second scale degree? Well, think about it this way. If we have a major second, we are going from the first letter to the second letter. If we have a major third, we are going from the first letter to the third letter. So it's a major third. And then if we have a perfect fourth, we are going from the first to the fourth letter. And then I'm going to skip a tritone because we're going to do a perfect fifth now. A C to a G. Remember, the G is the 5th scale degree. And then we have C to A is a major 6th, because this is the 6th scale degree. And then C to B is a major 7th, because it's the 7th scale degree. And then the octave is perfect 8th as well. Now, let's go back to the idea first of the minors. So, if we look at a minor second, that's just a half step below the letter to which it's the second. So it's still the second, it's a D flat then. If we were to say this is a C to a C sharp, then this would be a diminished second, I believe. Wait, let me actually check that real quick. This would be, yes, a diminished second. And so, and not a minor second because it is moving from a C to a C as well. And so we are... I feel like this is a bad example because they're right next to each other. But let's say we moved from, I want to say B to C sharp. That would be a diminished third, because notice the third scale degree of B, or this 1, 2, 3 up to D from B, is 3, but this is a diminished third because it's going to a D flat. And if we were to say this is a C sharp, then that would be a major second because it's going to the C letter, which is the second letter here. Now, something to note is that this idea that it's from a B to a C sharp versus a B to a D flat, those are enharmonic. So to you it may seem the same, but it's all in theory. So in theory, if the letter is different, then it's a different interval there, where we're going to instead have if we were to have a D flat here, it's a diminished third, versus a C sharp would be a whole step, since it's the second. And then that's where we get this augmented fourth or diminished fifth thing from the tritone. So if we go from a C to an F, right, or an F sharp, or a C to a G flat, right, a C to an F sharp is an augmented fourth because you're bringing it up from the F. It's higher than that 4 steps, but it's lower than that 5 steps. So that means we're having, or not 5 steps, but 5th degree after here. And so we can see that based on different intervals, it's all about the number of half steps there, and based on what letter it would be. So that may be a little complicated, but you may not need to know that, but it is possible that it comes on a test where it's asking you, okay, let's say an E, for example. What is the interval from an E to a flat versus an E to a G sharp? And an E to a G sharp would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So that's a major third. But if it was an A flat, then that would be a diminished fourth, because the A is the 4th letter in the sequence of E, F, G, A. So it's going to be a diminished there. So just be wary of how you do that, because it depends on what letter they're telling you. But it's unlikely you'll be tested on that, so if you're ever given a question like that, I would honestly revert if you don't understand all that I've been talking about this whole time. Either rewatch this if it's really important to you, or ask ChatGPT, or just go with the normal intervals from minors and majors and perfects and so forth. So, next up, we're going to look at the intervals of a major scale. So, a major scale, remember, is the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So that's a major scale because it has all of the major keys here, which you could also have like sharps and flats and stuff in major keys, but they're just different types of keys. Major and minor uses all of the same keys, it's just in different orders. So in a major scale, in order to determine what certain pitches are in a major scale, we need to use intervals that we just discussed. We've discussed whole steps and half steps before, but I want to help you understand how we're going to be using these. So for C, for example, this is a really easy one because we just go from letter to letter. But what happens when we have something like we want to know an A scale, right? So what's an A major scale? Well, we know that C does a whole step from C to D, it's a whole step. Then from D to E, it's a whole step. Then from E to F, it's a half step. Then F to G, it's a whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So we can say that our major scale intervals, I don't know if you can see this on both screens here, it goes always whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Now, notice that half step between the B and C, seventh leading tone? That is what causes that tension, remember, that we were talking about earlier, for that leading tone. So, 2 whole steps, a half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step is a major scale, is what makes up a major scale. So, let's do a little bit of practice here. If we do an A scale, we know it's 2 whole steps, so we go from A to B to C sharp to D to E to F sharp to D sharp, or to G sharp to A. Now, let's go over that again. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And so that's how a major scale looks. So you can see in any scale, if it's major, then the 6th and the 7th scale degrees are always going to be a whole step apart. So remembering that it's a whole step between the 1st and 2nd scale degrees, a whole step between the 2nd and 3rd, a half step between the 3rd and 4th, a whole step between the 4th and 5th, whole step between 5th and 6th, whole step between 6th and 7th, and then half step between 7th and 8th is important because they may ask you, what is it? Now, we already discussed this idea of why don't we call it G flat. We discussed this idea that, and you can go read this paragraph if you'd really like, but it's all about what are the names. If we lower or diminish or augment each, then it's going to keep the same letter names. And so we say, and the reason why we do this is because we need to keep all of the letters consistent. So for example, I can't have a scale where I say, oh, A to B to D flat to D, because then I would have 2 different D notes inside of my scale, which wouldn't make sense. We need an A, B, and C, where we're able to add those accidentals or sharps and flats into the scale in order to express it properly. So we're having an A, B, C sharp, then a D, not an A, B, D flat, and then D. That wouldn't make sense in the scale because we wouldn't want to have 2 of the same letter. Okay, next up we get to talk about minor scales, which is some of my favorite little talks here. Let's go ahead and scroll down to those minor scales. So let's say the one where we're using all the same keys, or the natural keys, as C, is going to be A. So we're doing A. So that is an A minor scale, where we're going from A to A. And it's a minor scale because we have different intervals between each scale degree. So we have a lowered 3rd scale degree, which shows the interval from the tonic to the 3rd is a minor 3rd and not a major 3rd. So we have A to C is a minor 3rd, unlike the C to E, which is a major 3rd. Because remember, C to E, this is 4 half steps, which is a major 3rd, versus A to C, which is a scale degree. It's lowered there by a half step. So we instead are having a whole step, and then a whole step, and then a half step before. So notice we have this half step earlier. And so I actually wrote down for each of these what the whole step and half step differences are. So we can see that, let's let's take a look at what an A major scale would look like. Remember, it's a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So we see here that it typically has a C sharp here. So we're lowering the third scale degree from the major scale to a C. So we're going A, B, C, right? That's lowering it from what a major scale would usually be. And then we are going to D, which is normal, right? And then in the A scale, in A major scale, we usually go here. And then we go here still. And then in the major, we would have on the 6th scale degree, we usually have a heightened F here, but we are going to lower it for the A minor. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F. We're lowering the 6th scale degree. So far we've lowered the 3rd and the 6th. And then usually in an A major, we have this up to this G sharp here before our A, because remember that half step. But we're going to lower that as well to a G. So we can say that a natural minor scale lowers the 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th scale degrees. So let's take a C minor scale then. Let's figure out what a C minor. So usually the C major scale is that. But we know we need to lower the 3rd. So if we're going to lower the 3rd, we have an E flat there. And so we have C, D, E flat, and then we're going to have an F still. We're going to have a G, then we're going to have a lowered A. That's an A flat. We're lowering it from the A, from the major scale. And then we're going to have a lowered 7th, which is a B flat. And then that's a C minor scale. We get all the way back to C. So we're using all the same keys, right? But we're just lowering them. We're using 7 keys still. It's still diatonic. But we're lowering the 3rd, 6th, and 7th. So then what I'd like you to notice, we're going to go back to A minor. We do a harmonic minor in which we don't lower the 7th scale degree. So no longer do we have a 3rd, 6th, and 7th lowered. We only have the 3rd and 6th lowered. So we're going to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or F, and then we don't do a G, we go to G sharp, and then A. Now, I'd like to note something. This F to G sharp is not what you would expect. It's not a minor 3rd. As we talked about earlier, it's actually an augmented 2nd, because notice this is the 2nd letter after F. So we're going from F to G still, but this time we're augmenting it. We're bringing it up one. We're from the natural minor, we're raising it a half step. And you want to guess why? Can you guess why? We might want to go A, B, C, D, E, F, and then G sharp. And then A. I bet you can hear it. That's leading right there. So by adding this little half step here, this creates that tension. It creates that leading tone in the 7th scale degree again that allows us wanting to be satisfied. We no longer have any dissonance like the tritone. I don't think I went over that earlier. A tritone will create something called dissonance, which is this very not good feeling within you. But we can see that an A minor scale will have a whole step, and then a half step, and then a whole step, and then a whole step, and then a half step, and then a whole step, and then a whole step. So we have whole steps between the 1st and 2nd scale degrees, a half step between the second and third, a whole step between the third and fourth, a whole step between the fourth and fifth, and then a half step between the fifth and sixth, a whole step between the sixth and seventh, and a whole step between the seventh and eighth. So we have whole step, one half step, one whole step, one half step, two whole steps, one half step, two whole steps. Versus in a harmonic minor, we have, now I'm going to go over what harmony and melody is in just a second, but harmonic minor is going to have an augmented second here instead of a whole step. So instead of going whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, there, we will have a whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, augmented second, half step. Now, you may ask, what does harmony mean? What does melody mean? Well, it's very simple. Harmony is when you play two pitches at the same time. So, let's say we have a very nice C and G here. Oh, wait. Or a very terrible tritone. So that's a very nice sounding, that's our perfect fifth there. Now, if we were to play one after the other, that's a melody. So if we go between one and the other, that's what melody is. So that's the difference between melody and harmony. Okay, so next up, I get to talk about relative major and minor scales. So if we were to play an A, let me scroll down to the relative majors and minors real quick. If I were to play an A minor scale, that is a relative minor to the C major scale because it uses all of the same keys on the keyboard, right? So the same goes with a C minor scale. So if we go C minor versus a E flat scale, E flat major, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. So notice how that's a major scale and it uses all the same keys as a minor scale here, and we can see that in these piano keys. So that's what a relative major and minor. Versus, we may also have what's known as a parallel. Ignore that screen, we're doing stuff on the piano in this screen now. The parallel is going to be they start on the same pitch. So for example, we have A minor. The parallel major to that is A major because we're going, we start on the same pitch here. Okay, so the relative major and minor scales are actually more closely related than parallel scales. This is just a test question to remember, is like they're more closely related if they're relative because they use the same pitches versus just starting on the same pitch doesn't make much of a difference. Okay, so then we get to go over a melodic minor. So a melodic minor is another type of minor scale where we're actually doing two switches at once. So let's take A, for example, again. We go from A to B to C to D to E to F, G to A. What we're doing here is we're once again raising the 6th and 7th this time from the natural minor. So we're only lowering the 3rd on the way up. So A, B, C. Normally we would do A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A. For the major scale, right? For the melodic minor, we're going to be going A, B, C, D, E, and then F sharp, G sharp, A. And so notice how we're only lowering that C, that third scale degree. And then, on our way back, guess what? We get to go back to natural minor. So if we play that all in a row, it sounds very fun to play there. So we can see that we have, instead of an augmented second here, we just have a whole step, and then a half step, and then we go back to the natural minor there. Okay, so next up we get to talk about blues inflections. So blues inflections are combining both major and minor scales. So in a blues scale, the degrees of 7 and 3 can be lowered. So for example, we could have A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. That's a blues scale since we're lowering the G sharp there to a G, and we didn't lower the F since it didn't say to lower the sixth. And then we could also just have normal, the normal pitches, or somewhere in between. So we can use often in blues they will use things that are between the pitches. So as I showed you earlier, for example, there's a pitch from an E see how there's this in between of the E? Well, that's what that's referring to here, is the between the keys. It uses keys outside of the chromatic scale. It uses those outside of the 12 equal temperament. Now, we can also have, a fifth scale degree lowered, and this is a little less commonly, but we could also have, like, for example, if we have a C, that would be lowering the fifth right here so that you don't have that fifth, that G. Okay, so next up we get to talk about melody and defining it as an example using scale degrees. So remember, melodies are one pitch after the other. So playing it like this versus a harmony is just all of that. And so if we have two together, then that's called harmony. And melodies use the 7 notes of a single scale, so usually we have most melodies using those 7 scale degrees that we've been talking about this whole time. And so Happy Birthday is in major mode, which means it uses the 7, where is my Happy Birthday? Okay, there it is. It's a major scale, and we can see that we can use each of the scale degrees to what's known as transpose, or change the letters without changing the intervals. So we can change it into a different key just based on the intervals of each key. So whether we use C major, F major, or E flat major, or A major, or any of the 15 major scales, we can see, and there are 15 major, I believe 15 minor, but we'll get there later. But we can play Happy Birthday as scale degrees show. So if I were to play it in the key of C, it would go So notice how I'm playing it in the C scale, where I'm going 5, 5, 6, 5, 5, 6. Yeah, I'm not going to sing it. 5, 5, 6, 5, 1, 7. Versus if I were to say play it in the key of G major, so say I wanted to play it with all of those, with that F sharp there, then I would play G, so the 5th in G is D, so I would play I lost my track. But as you can see, it sounds the same because all the intervals are the same, but it's just in a different key. So you can therefore transpose it to a different key if you are doing that. So I am going to go ahead and stop right there, and we're going to pick right back up with a few more concepts in the next video. So thank you for watching.